And now, AM 650 presents your source for leading-edge news and information on today's hottest products and services. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Well, good evening. Welcome to Experts on Call. And on the program today, we're talking about your home and in particular, the roof over top of your home. The theme on Experts on Call today, as we like to repeat many, many times, it's called Protecting Your Investment. And with a roof in mind, joining us in studio again is Sean Lang. Sean is president of Inter-Provincial Roof Consultants. And it's good to have you back in the studio, Sean. Nice to see you.
Good to see you as well.
So talk to us first and foremost, what is a roof consultant? You have taken many courses, you belong to professional organizations, you have professional designations. Tell us about what it took to put all of that together.
Well, I'll tell you a bit of my background. I started off in this industry as a laborer on a smaller roofing company and basically shoveling gravel, running the tar kettle and working my way up through the ranks to becoming a foreman and running crews. So I eventually got my journeyman certification through the RCABC, which is the Roofing Contractors Association of British Columbia.
Okay.
That allowed me to make the next step into another avenue of our industry, which could have been estimating or supervising or inspecting is where I chose to go.
Okay.
So after I made that decision that I wanted to become an inspector or a consultant in the industry, I went to work for an inspection firm, which I ended up purchasing, and started studying towards getting my registered roof observer designation, which is given out by the Roof Consultants Institute in the States.
Okay.
Had to pass a test for that. And once I got that, I became a registered roof observer and carried on just learning and gathering information as I inspect jobs.
What's the difference between being a registered roof observer, the designation you've worked hard for and achieved? Mm-hmm. What's the difference between that, Sean, and a consultant? Or is it the same thing?
Well, a consultant spends more time at the desk, let's just say, designing, dealing with the client first, one-on-one.
Okay.
Whereas a registered roof observer is the guy that goes out in the field and actually does the review of the work in progress. Okay, so I'm both. I do the consulting and I'm also a registered roof observer. So I'll meet with the clients, we'll talk about the roof system, we'll talk about what their experience has been in the past with their roof, what kind of troubles have they had. Mm-hmm. Where would they like to go with it? Would they like to just have it looked at and maintained for a while? Would they like to have the roof replaced? They've had so much trouble and they've cost them so much money in repairs and damage to the interior
right.
that they'd like to have it replaced and they need some help figuring out what to do and how to do it properly.
Right.
Then we would write the specs to get that all done and tender it to the roofing contractors, and that's where the roof observer comes into play, because now the roof contractor is actually installing the roof system, and somebody has to watch that to make sure it's being done properly.
Okay, now the reason I asked you about these confusing sounding designations is because, well, we don't know much about roofing. The average person, we had Wendy Atchison, the head of the BC Homeowner Protection Office, join us a couple of weeks ago on Experts on Call. She came in during our Key Pacific Talk About Strata episode, and she left behind some very interesting materials that I've shared with our guest, Sean Lang. And one of them is entitled Maintenance Matters and Maintaining Your Roof Does Too. Mm-hmm. And it says, first line of the whole brochure here from the government says, many people don't think about their roof until a leak appears. And Sean, your experience, lots of years now, that's probably the truest thing that you've heard all day.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's out of sight, out of mind. I mean, it's up there, where as long as we're dry and underneath it, who cares what it looks like?
Yeah, we get calls from people that expect to not only have us come out the day that they call us and review everything that's going on with their building, but they also expect the spec to get written, the project to start the next day. They expect the process to be that quick, when in fact there's quite a bit of work that goes into designing a roof system, putting it out via a proper tender process to reputable contractors.
Sure.
It takes them time to even formulate a price properly. I mean, if you call up a contractor and ask him to give you a price today, he may throw a number at you, but it's not going to be as precise as it should be.
Right.
Because he doesn't have for one, a proper scope of work that details everything that needs to be done. And then he doesn't have the time, because you want to price so quickly, to actually review everything, to measure everything properly. He might just throw a number at it.
Right. So on the phone, you tend to go, because any self-respecting professional will go, well, you know, I can't serve up a full-on quote on the phone on no notice whatsoever.
Exactly.
And then so you're sitting there, well, that's okay. How about just a ballpark? Give me a clue. Give me an idea of the kind of range we're in. That you can do on the phone, right?
Well, that happens a lot too. Clients will, for instance, call up 3 different roofing contractors and ask for ballpark quotes.
Sure.
And they'll, let's just say we're talking about a building that would typically run about $100,000 to replace the roof.
Likely a strata of some kind.
A strata type building.
Yeah.
We deal with a lot of stratas.
I'll bet.
So let's just say they call up 3 contractors and they get these 3 numbers that are ballpark figures. Well, those are based on nothing, really. They're based on the contractor looking at the roof briefly and throwing a round number at it. And the owners will then take that number and they'll start to plan with that number, which is great because at least they're planning with something.
Sure.
But they're not necessarily planning enough and properly.
Right.
So what we always try to recommend is that, have us or somebody like us design a scope of work for that roof system so that we've actually spent some time up on the roof looking at all the details that are in place on the roof system, and then deciphering which types of roof components need to be addressed, which types of materials should be applied to each of those different details to properly roof them in and meet building code and proper good roofing practices. Then we take that scope of work and we'll put it out to tender to those contractors.
Right.
Those prices come back a lot different.
I'll bet they do. But all this, of course, is, and I'm quoting now again from the BC Homeowner Protection Office and their materials. And I'm just reading chapter and verse right off the page here. Who should be called for service, says the Homeowner Protection Office? Well, a professional roofing consultant or contractor, which is why I asked you moments ago about the difference, should be hired to review the condition of the roof and perform the inspection and carry out any required maintenance. A good place to start, the Roofing Contractors Association of British Columbia, and then another organization is the Roof Consultants Institute, of which you are a member.
Yeah, professional member, yeah.
Right, and it says here, an international agency, I'm talking about the Roof Consulting Institute. Its members are registered roof observers or registered roofing consultants and are located throughout North America. And you, of course, are located in Cloverdale, British Columbia.
That's right, yeah.
So again, are all of the people who are with Inter-Provincial Roof Consultants roof observers, do they have the same training and designation, Sean, that you do?
Yeah, our guys are at different levels in their careers, so but everybody that we hire is all a ticketed journeyman roofer, which means a lot to us. We don't think that a person should be going out and reviewing the work of a contractor unless they have the experience of a contractor. It's kind of like having a doctor review a mechanic. They're both very professional. They both know how to review something. A doctor can review a body, obviously, and a mechanic can review a car, but have they actually worked on the same things? So
you wouldn't want to ask them to change places, for example.
No. But and it's obviously not exactly what we're talking about. But the important thing is that the guys that we have working with us have the experience to know when a roofer's not doing things properly.
They know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Right.
They also know how to find issues that may be hidden because they've hid them themselves. And it's an unfortunate truth that everybody who's doing a job will have good days and bad days. Maybe purposely they'll do some work that's a little bit less than professional, maybe a lot less than professional, in an effort to get the job done quickly and get out of there. And we've seen this happen. One of the luxuries that we have is that we spend our days touring around and reviewing all different contractors' work. So we've seen tons of different quality standards from different contractors.
And plus, if you're ticketed journeyman roofers yourselves from bygone days, you've got the same credentials as these guys up there working on the roof. You know exactly what to look for. You probably even had the same teachers at one time or another.
If they've had teachers, yeah. We've had anybody that's gone for their ticket, especially one of the newer Red Seal tickets, has had teachers. They've gone to the RCABC and they've taken the training. And that's important because There's a lot that can be learned on a roof, but then there's a lot that needs to be learned in a classroom and being taught by somebody who knows the textbooks. For instance, if you were to start working with me on a roof system and you put in 30 years working with me on a roof, you're learning my way of doing the roofing.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be the wrong way, but you've been doing it for 30 years over and over and over and over and over.
Right.
You've got 30 years of experience, but it's the wrong 30 years. So having somebody go through the training to learn how to install a roof system the proper way, according to industry standards, manufacturer standards, the RCABC standards, goes a long way to the end product becoming a decent roof system.
So what happens to you? When you're up on the roof, you've been called out. Inter-Provincial Roof Consultants is on the job, and there's Sean crawling around the roof doing his inspection routine, comes across some substandard work. The person who has performed that work is that guy with 30 years experience, maybe 1 year 30 times, but nonetheless, he's been around the block a few times, and he goes, "What do you mean, substandard work? I've been in this business for 30 years, Buster."
Yeah.
Then what do you do?
We run into that a lot. And we have to approach every contractor and every professional on the roof differently. We try to read their demeanor when we come on the job so that we're not going to go up against somebody that's obviously aggressive. Because a lot of contractors can be aggressive. So we'll go up and we try and read them, and we wouldn't want to go up and say, well, that's substandard work.
Right.
For instance, we might say that doesn't appear to be correct, and it doesn't appear to be according to the specification. And it's hard for the guy to say, well, you're insulting me if you're just simply stating that it doesn't meet the written standard.
Right, right.
Okay, so...
And you've taken the insult out of your comments and observations.
And
that's a smart tactic.
Well, it's actually one of the things as a registered roof observer you have to learn how to do.
Right.
Because
don't antagonize.
Don't antagonize. It can get very rough out there.
I'll bet. And you're also 20, 30 feet above the ground.
Yeah, we don't fly. And we've got into some altercations, verbal altercations on the roofs between guys that just will not accept what we're trying to tell them. And it can become difficult. And that's where we look to, and I always tell my guys, I always say, if you run into that issue, please call me and I will deal with the owner of that company, rather than dealing with that individual on the roof.
Okay.
Right? Because that individual and our representative, if they start to yell at each other on a roof, that's not going to get anything done. So I usually tell my guys, back off, leave the job if you have to. I'll start making phone calls. We'll get some action another way. But typically when you approach the guys on the roof and you show them why the issue that you're saying is not being done correctly,
right,
why it doesn't meet the standards.
So it's about evidence too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We always try to show them.
Right.
I'm not just going to say, well, that corner's wrong. We'll try and show them why it's wrong and point to the specification. I mean, when there's a written document that actually states how something's supposed to be done, it's very hard for the contractor to then turn to you and say, well, I've been doing it this way for 30 years. Well, no, maybe you have, but you bid this job according to this specification. You said you would do this job for $100,000 based on these written instructions.
Right.
So if you're not prepared to do it to those written instructions, you're in contravention of your contract.
Right, and they were awarded the contract on the basis of committing to perform the following steps and install this, that, and the other thing.
Exactly.
And if that is not being honored, then there's a breach contract.
Basically. I mean, typically that doesn't happen. Typically what happens is there's the riot act is read from the owner of the company down to the guys on the roof.
Sure.
And they have to step up their game and start to perform properly.
Right.
One of the duties that we have as the spec writers or designers of the roof system and the subsequent registered roof observer is that we authorize the invoices that the contractors send in. So when they submit an invoice for work completed on the project, we verify for the owner whether or not it's appropriate for payment.
Right.
So this gives us a lot of power.
And it also I would think whatever additional costs are incurred by retaining Inter-Provincial Roof Consultants, you can offset some of those costs simply by having pros watching out on your behalf, and so that you are going to make savings in other areas as the construction of the roof goes along.
Well, you end up with a job that runs smoother. Issues that are going to cause problems down the road are typically discovered during the process of installation, so they get corrected as you're going along. We get calls sometimes from clients who have had their roof done and now want it looked at.
Oh.
And that can work in the sense that we can go up there and we can walk the roof and we can visually look at everything. But I can only tell you what I see on the surface.
Right.
So I can't tell whether the plywood deck has been addressed, if it was loose, if the nails were backing out, if there's sufficient nails, if it was stapled, if it has been re-nailed so that it actually will hold up to the new roof system standards. We don't know if the ventilation's been upgraded. We don't know if the underlay went down right. We don't know if it was a flat roofing system that had insulation put in, was it all secured properly?
So when you get called in after the fact into these situations in which it's very difficult to tell what the heck's going on, are you allowed, or does the person or homeowner who retains your services, are they okay with you, well, cutting in here and there to do a check of what's underneath? Because it may look fine, but who knows what's going on underneath?
That's a whole process in itself, because we're technically not the contractor.
Right.
So,
right.
The contractor holds the warranty on that roof system, so we can't go up there and start carving
Right.
into it.
Of course, then you void the warranty, wouldn't you? Right.
But if there is a bit of a dispute going on and the contractor wants to get paid out the rest of his money, and we suspect that something wasn't done properly, we can ask that the contractor does a sample of the roof, cuts a sample of the roof system out. And if the contractor plays along, he will do that work.
Right.
Remove that section of the roof system so we can assess whatever we're looking for. And then he will make the repairs to his standards and whatever specification standards, if there were any.
And the warranty remains in place.
Exactly. And it's a way of confirming that, I mean, if he did it right, why would he care if he has to do that? If he did it wrong and he doesn't want to make this cut in the roof system, he might be hiding something he doesn't want it discovered.
We need to take a break, but just before we go, how frequently do you at Inter-Provincial Roof Consultants get called in, Sean, after the fact to kind of do that last look over, and then situations like that come up where they're maybe not exactly what you paid for here?
More than we'd like.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it happens too often. People figure they can save the money of not having us involved from the beginning of the project. And we come in at the end and all of a sudden there's a huge deficiency list of things we just see from the surface.
Right.
So not even everything we can't see, but just the stuff we see. And now the contractor has to remain on site, or now it's a fight between the contractor and the owner because maybe some of the stuff that we're pointing out wasn't part of his quote, because his quote didn't really say anything.
So we'll talk about, when we come back from the break, we'll talk about how to be in the homeowner situation in which you're not going to end up in that scenario where you've got an inspector or a consultant coming in after the job and then doing battle with the person you had paid to do the job in a certain way in the first place, and there you are in the squeeze between the two factions, and it's not a pleasant place to be. Our guest is Sean Lang, president of Inter-Provincial Roof Consultants, online, by the way, at iprc.ca. This is Experts on Call on AM 650, and we'll be right back.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.